This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air now with breaking news from Wall Street. That is the scene at the Dow Jones Industrial right now. About a minute from the close of the markets, the Dow headed for its worst single-day point loss since the Great Recession back in 2008. There you see it down almost 2,000 points, 7.5%. Concern over that spreading coronavirus all over the world. A global price war in oil set off by Saudi Arabia and Russia, and the possible freezing up of credit markets, all conspiring for this huge drop in the Dow Jones today, capping off drops in financial markets around the world that began in Asia almost 24 hours ago. Want to go to Rebecca Jarvis on the floor of the stock exchange right now. This fear of coronavirus continuing to spread, concerns about a global recession.
We have seen that ripple effect certainly here on Wall Street today, George. A historic day, the largest point drop in history, with stocks falling more than 2,000 points during the trading session, and the worst day for stocks on a percentage basis since the Great Recession and the financial crisis. And here on Wall Street, the overarching theme has been the unknowns, the uncertainty surrounding this virus, and the fact that to date, Wall Street still doesn't believe we have the data surrounding the virus itself to know that we're fully out of the woods here, George.
Right. And what we're seeing is that was combined, as I said, with that price war in oil set off by Saudi Arabia and Russia, and the signals we're seeing from the bond market that a recession could spread around the world.
Exactly. And part of that price war began over the weekend. OPEC had a meeting to address the falling price of oil in the face of the coronavirus. The coronavirus weighs on demand. When factories are closed, people aren't traveling, consumers aren't out and about, that weighs on oil. And the thinking was over the weekend, OPEC would meet and find ways to support oil prices. Instead, the Saudis walked from the talks and started a price war with Russia. That has weighed very heavily on oil today, which closed down more than 20% at $31 a barrel. And keep in mind, there are 6.7 million people in America that work at energy companies. With oil prices at these levels, at least some of those jobs are potentially at risk, George. And the bigger question going forward are the industries that have been impacted by this. Now, of course, we do hear about the energy industry, but so far we've seen it in the cruise industry. We've seen it in the airline industry. We've seen so many companies warn that their operations overseas in China have been impacted by this, and so many companies have now told their employees to stay home. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft among those companies. Also companies canceling conferences. And the question that economists are now asking is, as people stay home, as choices are made about whether to go out to dinner, whether to go to a movie, whether to go to a sporting event, that all has a ripple effect on the economy. And today especially, you are starting to hear from analysts like Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's, saying without some form of fiscal stimulus, the economy very well could face a recession this year, George.
Thank you, Rebecca. And that has the White House considering emergency stimulus measures now that they would have to work with Congress on to stimulate this economy. We want to go to John Karl in Washington with more on that. The president coming back from Florida today, going to meet with his economic advisors this afternoon.
That's right, George. And he also plans to meet with CEOs of major companies on Wednesday. We're told they're looking at a range of potential options to provide some economic stimulus here. The way Larry Kudlow, his top economic advisor, has put it, these would be timely, targeted to where we can do the most good. So potentially, he said, efforts to help the airline industry, which is obviously expected to be hit very hard by all of this. Also, small business owners. Those are the type of measures that are being considered at the White House. Nothing announced yet, but as you mentioned, meeting with his economic team today at the White House, and we expect to see CEOs of some of the nation's largest corporations at the White House on Wednesday.
And John, that's what the White House is considering. You've also had Democrats in Congress talk about possible stimulus measures as well, including paid family leave for workers who might have to work from home or aren't able to have child care for their children or home from school. Any chances of bipartisan cooperation here?
Yes, George, and we're talking about paid sick leave, particular people that have to stay home and will not be paid while they're staying home. This is, as you mentioned, something that's been talked about by members of Congress, by Democratic leaders in Congress, and we're told the White House is also looking into this as well. So I could see a potential bipartisan agreement on that.
Let's take a look at what we know now about the spread of the coronavirus around the world. Over 113,000 cases around the world, close to 4,000 deaths in at least 111 countries right now. Here in the United States, 607 cases, 26 deaths in 36 states. Want to bring in Jen Ashton on the phone right now. Rebecca mentioned it. So much is unknown about this virus, but we know the spread has not stopped, especially here in the United States.
Exactly, George. And I think what people need to remember is as we hear these numbers go up, we do expect them to rise and rise significantly as the testing process becomes more mainstream. And there have been many challenges and obstacles logistically and continue to be, by the way, with the testing process. But the more people you test, the more cases we will see. What's going to be really important, and we've said it from the beginning, is not just knowing the positive cases and the confirmed cases, but how many tests are being run and how many people have been exposed and are infected. That will give us a better grasp on how common this is and what the penetrance and incidence and prevalence is in our society. And until we have a better grasp on those numbers, it's hard to put it into the clinical context of knowing how significant a virus is. But as you know, this virus, brand new, less than 3 months old, we don't have a crystal ball and we don't know really how it will behave, and that's causing medical and scientific uncertainty.
Uncertainty all over the world. Jen Ashton, thanks very much again. The news from Wall Street right now, more than 2,000-point drop, the worst point drop in the Dow in history, the worst day in the market since the financial crisis in 2008. Our coverage is going to continue on ABC News Live and a full report tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a special report from ABC News.